There are so many people, and I've spoken to a few, who sucked it up and went through the whole process, became a faculty member, and then quit because they realized it wasn't for them and they were just doing it to make other people happy. Getting a PhD was one of the hardest, most rewarding, most identity shifting experiences I've ever had in my life, and I want you to know what goes into it before you start your PhD, or give you some inspiration if you're in the thick of it right now. There is so much I learned throughout my experience and what I wish I knew beforehand, so let's get into it. Why did I decide to do my PhD? I actually loved psychology my whole life. I did a psychology research specialist program. I volunteered at different labs. I was a lab manager in my gap year after undergrad, and I knew no matter what I did, I wanted to do more school. Like, I love learning. I'm a Sagittarius, and it's just something that will always be part of me. So a PhD made sense for a few reasons. One, I just mentioned I love learning. Two, I thought I wanted to go down the academic route and become a professor with my own lab and all of that. We'll get into why I didn't go into academia. Third, I knew a 9-to-5 corporate job was just never going to be me. It's not my personality, and I definitely fall into the more entrepreneurial, flexible schedule, working for myself, being independent. A PhD just fit my lifestyle at that moment. And the last reason, which isn't glamorous but realistic, I didn't know what else I wanted to do. I loved psychology. I didn't really have anything else to fall back on or that I was really passionate about, so I decided to at least apply and take it from there. So that's exactly what I did. I applied, got in, and then I started grad school at U of T as well. I did a master's PhD program where the master's was accelerated, and then the rest of it was getting my PhD. If you want a whole video on the process, the application, and all of that nitty-gritty stuff, let me know, because I decided to keep it out of this video in case you weren't interested. So let's get into the second part, which is the reality of doing a PhD and what my experience was like. So the first year is definitely going to be a bit jarring, a bit overwhelming. You'll feel imposter syndrome. You're just going to be very overwhelmed. At least I was. You are learning so many new things in such a short amount of time. You're learning statistics. You're being a teaching assistant for the first time, how to engage in academic discourse and talk to other grad students and mentors. And you're kind of adopting this new identity as a young academic. So that's also an internal shift you need to go through and slowly accept. So if you're feeling that way, it is so normal, and I wish somebody told me that before I started, because everybody subtly looks like they know exactly what they're doing, but nobody talks about the fact that we're all lost, we're all starting at the same time, that it's okay to feel that imposter syndrome, and it is so common among academics to feel this way. And odds are you're type A, you have good grades, you did all the things to get into the PhD, and now you're surrounded by the best of the best, and you're no longer the one who is maybe the top of your class or who is really impressive. And that's kind of hard to grapple with because you are in this comparison mode. And I want to tell you that that is not healthy or productive, not just in your PhD, but in any aspect of life. So after the first year, which was an accelerated master's, I officially started my PhD, and this was where things got a little bit more fluid. I got used to the pace of courses and research and posters, conferences. Like, there is so much that happens. But here are a few things I wish I knew beforehand, because a lot of my friends who weren't in academia didn't know what I did as a PhD student. And so a typical week could look something like this. There's so many things that a PhD student does, and I know that feels overwhelming, but I personally loved that every week looked a bit different. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be doing the same thing every single day. And there are some periods where I was doing something similar every day because there was a deadline. And so that helped me personally not feel bored. So yes, your work week will be chaotic, but at least you get to pick and choose when you want to work on things. And there's definitely a lot of diversity. Let's talk about the challenges that I experienced. First off, imposter syndrome and self-doubt. I'm repeating this again because it is so prominent, and you just feel like you're never doing enough because that to-do list is daunting and it is always being added to. And I'm not gonna lie, burnout is pretty inevitable as a PhD student, but it's not something that has to happen. It is preventable. I personally experienced it because I had a problem with setting boundaries and saying no to things. So if there was a project or if people thought I was interested in something, I would just say yes because I thought it looked good for my CV, and I was taking on way more than I could handle. And that is when I got burnt out. So if there's a little lesson in there for you, it's that you don't have to say yes to everything. You're not going to be able to put in that effort for what you're actually interested in and what actually deserves your attention. I also learned not to surround myself with people who made their whole life school because personally, I am multifaceted and multi-passionate. When I'm with friends, I don't want to just be talking about that one thing. If there were people who I connected with, but all they talked about was their research and their papers and nothing else, I just couldn't stay with that long term. I also tried to have other hobbies and side projects. I started posting content online because I knew I needed a creative outlet or else I was gonna go crazy. The second challenge I experienced was it's pretty isolating and you can feel very alone at times. Even if you have lab mates, your advisor, and people you connect with, you are just doing the research by yourself. It is very much on you to finish the PhD and nobody really cares if you finish. Just trying to tell you the truth, and that is why some people take 6, 7, 8 years to finish, and it can be so hard to stay self-disciplined because of those moments where you feel alone. I highly recommend just like talking to the people in your circle, whether they are lab mates or your advisor. They're probably going through the same thing as you, or they've experienced what you have, and it is so helpful to have somebody who relates and who might be able to give you advice. Third challenge, which I know some people talk about, but I feel like we should talk about it more, and it is finances. We do not get paid a lot as PhD students. I'm pretty sure it's minimum wage. I'll look up the numbers and put them here for my university, but that's why a lot of people get a second job to even just exist and live, especially where I was in downtown Toronto. You should never be paying for grad school. You should always be receiving some sort of funding package that tuition will be subtracted from, but you will still have some left over for living expenses, rent, utilities, all of that. And again, we don't get paid a lot, but we get paid a little bit, and that is just something to be aware of if you're willing to put financial stability and potential income sources on pause for a few years, or you'll have to get a second job. So you might be thinking this PhD process does not sound fun. It sounds like there's a lot of negatives. Let me talk to you about some of the rewards and positives that I experienced and that will continue to stay with me for the rest of my life. The first one is learning resilience and discipline. Self-discipline will be the number one theme throughout your PhD. You are the one who has to get things done. You have to prioritize things, make the schedule. You can work when you want, you can make the schedule that you want, but it just has to get done. There were so many times where I ended up causing way more stress than I needed to because I left something last minute. I didn't prioritize my time well. So eventually you get into a rhythm and you learn what works for you, and that you have to do things when you're not in the mood. And that is such a valuable skill and life lesson that I will not take for granted. The second big reward was that I became an expert in my field. I studied emotions and emotion regulation, how it affects our well-being. I got to work with and connect with some of the greatest academics in that field, which was just amazing. To be able to learn so much and call myself an expert was unmatched. It just felt so good to get to that point. I literally worked with the researcher who invented emotion regulation, and I just saw his name on papers that I learned about in undergrad. So to actually work with those people, to learn from them, to have dialogue and discourse is so cool. My last reward, and the thing that I will probably value forever, is the ability to critically think and become confident in your voice. So even though there are those moments of self-doubt and imposter syndrome, you don't realize that in the background, you are subtly becoming an amazing critical thinker, questioning everything, realizing what the research process truly is, and you are becoming a real expert and confident thought leader in the field. And again, it might not feel like it, but once you start having conversations with non-academic friends, or you see a TikTok or something where it requires you to question it and really think outside the box, that is when you realize, oh my gosh, this PhD has actually taught me something, and I have these transferable skills to really go through life without just believing everything, because we know misinformation is so real these days. It's definitely an underrated skill that us PhDs learn and probably don't even realize we're learning. So I wanted to insert the video after I defended my dissertation and was waiting to hear the results. I posted these when it happened on Instagram and TikTok. They went viral and so many people found inspiration in this, so I wanted to show it here in case you're struggling right now.
Of course, you passed. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Everyone agrees it was a wonderful body of work.
so many emotions happening at the same time. Part of me couldn't believe it happened because before that, when I was studying and prepping, I was fully convinced that I was not going to pass. And it's something I do. I feel like a lot of academics do it, or a lot of type A people. You have to convince yourself you're not going to be able to achieve something so that you work harder. I don't know if that's just me. If you can also relate, comment below, because I have done this all the time, especially when it comes for school. And you can hear my advisor say, of course you passed, as in, of course you have the skills, you know your study inside out. Like, she never doubted me, but I doubted myself. When you get there, you feel like you can achieve anything after, because a PhD is no joke. It is hard, it is grueling, but it is also so rewarding. Now, if it was so rewarding, why didn't I stay in academia? So I remember hearing that every PhD student goes through this existential crisis around their second or third year, where they have to make a choice of whether they want to pursue academia, whether they want to have that conversation with their advisor. They just go through this identity crisis. And this is pretty scary because a lot of advisors accept graduate students thinking that they are going to carry the academic torch on, become a professor, do research, and continue on their legacy. So having the talk with an advisor is so scary. I've heard horror stories where advisors don't talk to their students anymore and kind of let them fend for themselves to try and finish the program. But luckily, my advisor was amazing. I had no doubts that she was going to be supportive no matter what I did. I personally had an amazing experience, but of course, it's a conversation you should prep for and know exactly what you're going to say. You don't have to have all the answers of what you do want to do, but at least reflect on why academia isn't for you. For me, I realized that the lifestyle of an academic is not something I wanted for myself. They don't have a lot of work-life balance. I saw my advisor and a lot of people just constantly thinking about research, constantly putting in so many hours to get tenure, to get publications, and some of them have to put their life on pause for that. I know a lot of people wait to have kids, get married, do all of the life things because they need to have all their energy and bandwidth focused on their career. The idea of chasing tenure and not having that job security right away after all of that work was something I really was not down for. And lastly, a more logistic one, if you're applying to faculty jobs or postdocs, you have to be willing to move wherever. The world is your job market, and 95% of the time, the place where you went to grad school is not going to hire you because those institutions want to diversify the faculty members they have, and they just aren't going to do that if they keep hiring their own grads. Now, I want to make it clear that there are so many jobs outside of academia that need to be talked about more during grad school because I feel like they're just training you to become a prof but don't really talk about non-academic jobs. So a few that come to mind are being a data analyst or data scientist, a UX researcher, working for a government or nonprofits, consulting, or being an entrepreneur. I started creating content early in grad school just for fun. I had no idea you could make any money off of it, and I ended up growing a pretty big following. I started to see more income come through. I never wanted to do content creation full time. I knew I always wanted to have something else. What I ended up doing is launching my mental health brand. It's called Her Healthful. I do one-on-one coaching. I do psychoeducation events. I also want to launch my own courses, ebooks, and do corporate workshops. I just wanted to be a wellness hub for all things psychology and mental health. That has always been my passion, in making research accessible, because that is one thing I found missing from grad school. People in academia in this bubble are so well aware of the research and what is best for your well-being, what might help you in stress, and what is constantly being put out there. But what is missing is that the average person doesn't know those research findings and might not know about them for years. And if they do find out about them, it's probably through a BuzzFeed article that strips away any nuances and is probably not telling you the accurate story. I just felt like it was a bit pointless if the people we're researching about don't even know what the research findings are. And it's not really anyone's fault. Like, I'm not saying the average person has to go on Google Scholar, access these articles, which most of the time aren't free, by the way, learn about what's happening unless they're interested, of course, because the material is heavy, the writing is dense, it's not easy to just know what's going on. And of course, it's not necessarily the responsibility of the authors to make sure everybody is getting access to it, because their only job is to do the research and write it. So there's that missing gap, that missing piece that I'm trying to fill in now with my role as a founder, and just trying to get that research out there in a way that's accessible and not dense. So is this route uncertain? Yes, of course. Nobody said entrepreneurship was easy. Nobody said content creation was stable. I do get anxious and feel like I have no idea what I'm doing with my life, but that's okay because I'm at least working towards something that is so aligned with my vision and my purpose. Now, I'm not 100% closing the door on academia because I would go back and teach. I wouldn't have my own research lab and all of that, but teaching is so aligned with my mission of knowledge translation and making things accessible. So that is a goal of mine in the next year, is to teach some courses at a university and get in a groove of doing that, because I do miss being in a university, as crazy as that sounds, and I want to connect with students. The last question that remains, do I regret getting my PhD? If you asked me a few years ago when I was in the thick of it, I would have probably said yes, because that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I was really questioning what I was going to do with my life. But if you ask me now, I would say that I would have regretted not doing it. I know myself, I'm a lifelong learner. I value education so much. The worst thing that came out of this was that I learned so much cool stuff and became an expert in this really amazing field of psychology. That is honestly not a bad thing, and I value so much of what I've learned. I've gained so many skills, and I just know that even if I'm not directly using it to become a professor, that doesn't mean it hasn't got me to where I am today, and even opened doors that probably wouldn't be here if I didn't get the PhD. I never thought I would say this, but I miss being a student, and that is probably why I did the PhD in the first place. Like I said, I value knowledge. Although I found a very unique path that works for me and who I am, I wouldn't be here without the PhD. And that's just a reminder that it's okay to have multiple passions in life and multiple chapters as well. I'm in my exploring and entrepreneurship era, but who knows, maybe in a few months I'm going to be in my teaching era. You can be doing multiple things at once. You can decide that something isn't right for you. Like, I am so glad that I spoke up and said that academia was not the right fit for me, because there are so many people, and I've spoken to a few, who just sucked it up and went through the whole process, became a faculty member, and then quit because they realized it wasn't for them and they were just doing it to make other people happy. As long as you have some underlying purpose or why, that is going to be your driving force and is going to help you with that long-term success. And maybe it's a bit silly, but I love that I can put PhD after my name. I love that I can call myself doctor. That validity, that title, I know it's just like a cherry on top, but it means something, and I'm not going to take it for granted. I'm proud of myself. My last note is for anyone considering a PhD and really doesn't know what to decide. So the type of person who should do a PhD is passionate about research. If you are deeply curious, if you have a burning question that you want to test and design and really get to the answer, then a PhD is perfect for you. You're also committed to long-term learning, because a PhD requires a lot of self-discipline and that continuous drive to learn and adapt. You are resilient in the face of challenges, because you will be put down quite a lot in your PhD and you'll feel like you want to quit, but you have to be able to persevere through those moments. You also love problem solving. You love a complex puzzle, or just trying to find out the theories or research to help you answer something. You can work independently, but you also love talking with other people to work through things. And lastly, you can handle some ambiguity, because research isn't always clear. You have to be creative and think of things outside the box and potential solutions, and you have to be comfortable with uncertainty. Now, switching gears to people who shouldn't do a PhD. You are wanting a quick fix or a shortcut to success, because let me tell you, a PhD is by no means quick. It is a long journey. It is years of your life, and it is something long term that you have to commit to. It's not for you if you're only doing it for the prestige. It's nice to have the title and all of that, but you also have to have that thirst for knowledge and that passion, because if you're just doing it to be a doctor, that is not going to be enough for you to keep going in those hard moments. You should not do it if you are looking for financial gain right away, because like I said, you don't get paid a lot and you might have to put your income on pause for a few years, or be okay with that significant cut compared to other people who might be going into corporate or 9-to-5 jobs right away. And you should not go into a PhD if you want a very clear career path after, because there is no guaranteed success or outcomes. But of course, if you want to become a professor and you just want to stick to that that traditional path, by all means, it is very possible and so many people do it, but it is a path with lots of uncertainty, so you have to be okay with that. If you are still struggling, here are some questions you can ask yourself and really reflect on, whether it's journaling, talking to somebody, and be honest with yourself. If you're considering a PhD, let me know if you have any questions or comments below, and if you are in one right now, is there something you're struggling with that you really need help on? Because I'm here for you. And also, if you've done your PhD, do you regret it? Were there any lessons that you took away that I didn't cover? Let me know, because I love connecting with other people on this. If you want to follow my journey as an entrepreneur and founder, as well as learn about some psychology, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and you can also find me on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.